Morning, everybody. My name is Mickey Draper. I'm a health and safety consultant here at THSP. Today's Toolbox Talk is going to be on risk assessments. So we're going to talk about risk assessments, what they are, why they're important, and how they keep us safe within the workplace. A risk assessment is a process that helps us identify hazards and risks in the workplace and implement control measures to eliminate or reduce those risks. It is an essential part of maintaining a safe working environment. So what is a risk assessment then? So a risk assessment is a process of identifying the hazard, so anything that could cause harm, such as machinery, chemicals, working at height, or even human error. Assessing the risk, so determine the likelihood and the severity of the harm from those hazards. Implementing controls, so taking steps to eliminate the controls or control the risk so that the chances of the accident, or injury are minimized. And then regularly reviewing the risk assessment to ensure it remains effective and reflects any changes within the workplace. So I'll just give you a quick example then. So the first step was identifying the hazard. So let's use a roof, for example. So we've noticed that a roof had a fragile skylight that workers could fall through. We assess the risk then. So fall through a skylight could cause serious injury or death. So the assessment was that the risk was high in this scenario. Implementing controls then. So we installed a young man's board over the fragile areas and briefed the team before starting work. Reviewing then. So when the weather changed and the wind picked up, we stopped work and we updated the risk assessment. And that's just an example of the 4 steps using a fragile skylight roofing environment. Moving on to the legal requirements then. So under the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999, the employees must carry out a risk assessment if they have 5 or more employees. The key element of the law are the duty to assess risk. Every employee must assess the risk to health and safety in the workplace. Identify control measures. Employees must put in place control measures to either eliminate or reduce the risk. Reviewing regularly, then assessment should be reviewed regularly, at least annually, or if the job or the process changes, then you go back and review that risk assessment, obviously more concurrent than an annual review. Involve employees then, so workers must be involved in the risk assessment process. They're the ones who identify the hazards on the ground. So site managers, site supervisors, operatives, when they do go onto a site, they tend to sign onto the risk assessment and method statement. That means they're accepting the risk and they're accepting that all the hazards have been identified and that suitable and sufficient control measures are in place. So one to feed down to the guys on site. If they're not sure the risk assessment covers all aspects of the work, they think there's additional hazards, they should then report it to whoever writes the risk assessment, so then risk assessments can be amended so they're suitable and sufficient for that specific site. When it comes to risk assessments then, there's no one size fits all when it comes to risk assessments. They must be site specific and they must identify all the hazards on the site and they must recommend suitable and sufficient control measures in order to eliminate, or if we can't eliminate the hazard, which in most cases we can't, we look to reduce the likelihood. Types of risk then. So we've got physical hazards, such as machinery, tools, equipment, working on heights, and environmental conditions like noise, temperature. We've got chemical hazards then, so exposure to harmful substances such as dust, fumes, and liquids. We've got biological hazards, so risk from bacteria, viruses, and other infectious agents. Ergonomic hazards then, poor postures, repetitive strain injuries, awkward working positions. So think about display screen equipment. We're working from home, working from computers and laptops. You got to think about the ergonomics. So what normally happens is we do a display screen equipment assessment. We've also got the Psychosocial hazards, so stress, bullying, and workload pressure. Steps to conduct a risk assessment then. So step one, we identify the hazards. Yep, so generally walk around the workplace, have a walk around and see what you can see. Look for any potentials where, it could cause injury. Consider the equipment, chemicals, processes, and the working environment. Consult workers for the feedback on any potential risks they encounter. Step two then, decide who might be harmed and how. Consider different groups, for example, workers, contractors, and visitors. Yeah, if you're running a site or you're running a workplace, the risk assessment needs to cover people visiting that site as well. You can't just focus on your guys that work there. So identify how they could be affected by the hazards, for example, cuts, burns, fatigue, and stress. Step three then, so we're going to evaluate the risk and decide on precautions. So we're going to assess the likelihood and the severity of harm and consider existing control measures. Are they sufficient or do they need improvement? Where necessary, then we're going to look to implement any further necessary precautions, for example, PPE, training and signage. Step four is recording your findings. So document your assessment, including the identified hazards, the steps taken to control them, and who is responsible for that action. Yeah. So if you've got a control measure, let's use an example. We'll use a forklift truck. Yeah. So the operator should be carrying out a daily pre-use inspection on that forklift truck. The action would be his responsibility, the operator's responsibility. Step five then is to review and update. Yeah, so regularly revisit the risk assessment. If the processes don't change, then the risk assessment can stay the same. However, it needs to be regularly reviewed. If the processes or the equipment are regularly changing or the site environment's regularly changing, that risk assessment needs to be reviewed more frequently. Yeah, reassess after accidents or near misses. Control measures then. So control measures are vital in reducing or eliminating the risk. They're usually broken down into a hierarchy. So the first one then is to eliminate the hazard. So remove the hazard entirely, e.g. using a safer substance. Yeah, a good one is, so where we're working at height on ladders, can we remove that completely and use working at height equipment such as a safe working platform, a lot safer, as it were. Substitute then, so replace the hazard process or material with something safer. Yeah, engineering controls, modify the work environment or reduce exposure. For example, ventilation and barriers. Administrative controls then, so change how the work is done. For example, rotating tasks to reduce fatigue. And PPE then, so personal protective equipment is always used as a last resort, and you should always use appropriate training where required, for example, gloves, helmets, eye protection, and dust masks, etc. Common risk assessment for mistakes then. So not involving the employees is a good one. Yeah, so I know, like we said before, employees do sign on for the risk assessments and the method statements, but sometimes, unfortunately, don't always read them. Yeah, so get employee involvement because they're the guys doing out the work, they're the guys carrying out the work, they're the guys seeing the hazards and the risk day to day. So, they're the subject matter experts when it comes to identifying the hazards. Overlooking low risk hazards then. So even low risk hazards should be considered. They can escalate over time. Yeah, so slips and trips, wet floor surfaces tend to be something that gets overlooked. So I've got signage and obviously try clean it up where you can. Failure to act on findings then. So after identifying risks, failure to implement control measures can lead to accidents. And yeah, not reviewing risk assessments regularly. So they should be updated regularly, particularly when there is a change to the working environment or process, which I sort of mentioned a couple of times. Why is the risk assessment important then? So it keeps the employees safe and it helps prevent accidents and injuries. It's also a legal requirement, so it ensures compliance with UK health and safety regulations. It improves the workplace culture, so a proactive safety culture improves morale and reduces absenteeism. It can reduce costs because it can prevent costly accidents, insurance claims, potential fines for non-compliance. Yep, so insurance companies, obviously when you claim against the insurance company, if you were to be found to be non-compliant in terms of a safety aspect, then the insurance company could then not pay out the cost of that claim, which means the cost would fall on the company. It boosts productivity, so safer workplaces have fewer disruptions and ensure workers can perform their jobs safely. In conclusion then, so risk assessments are essential in creating a safe workplace and ensuring everyone is protected from potential hazards. By regularly identifying and controlling the risk, we not only comply with the law, but also create a safer, more efficient environment for everyone. There is a risk assessment builder tool available within the THSP portal. If you use the portal, it's safer for everyone's. Its safety, is everybody's responsibility, and always report any hazard or unsafe practice you observe. If you have any concerns about a risk assessment, speak up. We all have a part to play in making our workplace safer. And that concludes today's risk assessment. I appreciate everyone tuning in and taking the time to be here with us today. My name is Mickey Draper from THSP. Have a good day. Have a good week. Thank you very much.